Okay, everyone. Hello again. Back to our webinar, Organizing for World Humanitarian Day 19. I hope you will enjoy it, and I hope you will have your responses from your questions during our webinar. I am Arva. I am working with the United Nations Major Group for Children and Youth as MENA Regional Focal Point for Humanitarian Affairs Working Group. By the way, just to remind you again, can you please turn off your microphone as you are not talking to hear each other a little bit better? Thank you so much again. Today we are going to discuss about the World Humanitarian Day. As you may know, World Humanitarian Day is held every year on 19 August, and we are celebrating it to propagate the idea of supporting people in crisis. And as United Nations Major Group for Children and Youth, we are aware of the value of young people's energy, and we are aware of the importance of supporting them. That is why we are celebrating meaningful day with young people.
Eva, sorry, I'm going to mute everyone and then I'll unmute you. So Eva, you can unmute yourself and then start talking.
Perfect.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Okay, where did I leave you? I don't know. Okay. As United Nations Major Group for Children and Youth, we are aware of the value of young people's energy, and we are aware of the importance of supporting them. That is why we are celebrating this meaningful day with young people, with you. We wanted to spread your voice, our voice all around the world, and we wanted to make our voice stronger than now with our online and national international events. Today we are going to talk about young people's role in humanitarian action, and we are going to discuss on many important points related to that issue. And for this aim, we have three special guests from three different organizations. We have Marcel Stefanik. He is a global coordinator for the youth engagement at International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. He is also coordinator for the Compact for Young People in Humanitarian Action. And we have Sofia Kuziakis from the Norwegian Refugee Council. She is a global youth specialist at NIRC. She is not here right now, I think, but she will be with us a bit later. And as a last speaker, we have Wakar from the UNMGCY. He is working with us as a global focal point for Humanitarian Affairs Working Group. And at the end of the webinar, we will taking your questions. Don't forget to send your questions. Don't leave anywhere at the end of the discussions. And firstly, we will start with Mr. Stefanik, if it is okay for you. He will share with us the perspective of IFRC on youth engagement in humanitarian action. It's important. He is going to share with us the perspective of IFRC and youth engagement in humanitarian action, and he will be sharing the background of the Compact for Young People in Humanitarian Action. Would you like to start, Mr. Stefanik?
Thank you very much, Arava. I hope I pronounced your name properly. I hope you can hear me. Is it Arava?
Yes, it's great.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. My name is Marcel, and thank you for the kind introduction and even a kinder invitation to be part of this webinar with, I believe, many young people who engage in the humanitarian landscape at the local level, and in that way, transform the humanitarian issues at the global level. Thank you again for inviting me, and I look forward to very lively exchange with Sophia and Sophia and Babukar, whom I had the chance to work for quite some time now, and also with the people who decided to join the webinar. I hope that we are going to have a engaging and dynamic exchanges. That's like somehow my expectation in comparison, or like as opposed to me just giving a lecture and speech. So as a kind of short intro, I guess I would like to introduce the organization I represent, the International Federation of Red Crescent Societies. I hope that many of the colleagues who have joined the call have either heard or have had a very positive engagement experience with a member of IFRC, who is the national society, which are present in across 191 countries. In regard to the engagement and why it is important for the membership and the network of the national societies, I guess I would start by saying that more than half of our global volunteer base is young people under the age of 30. So they are what we say the ones who are delivering the power of humanity in the communities. So basically, there is this numeric statistical reason, but also we acknowledge in the institution for many years that young people at the table are the ones who are bringing in a missing piece to whatever we do at the global or national or local level. When it comes to how these commitments or statements translated into the organizational structures and the way how we do business, I guess what is important to mention, I mean, in my perspective as the holder of the file, who's a technical expert, I am not driving the portfolio myself, because we have a constitutional commission which is composed of young people from all over the world. There are 9 of them, and they sit in a body which is called Youth Commission, and the chair sits in the governing board of the whole federation. So you can see that there is a direct link in this intergenerational collaboration and dialogue between the young people and the highest decision-making bodies in the federation. I will just maybe conclude my quick introductory remark by mentioning that we are committed to, as an institution, to making the strides. And one could have said that, 4 years ago, we were quite okay giving space to young people, having a youth representative with a strong voice and the same rights as the others on the governing board. But actually, we recently underwent a constitutional review where the membership of the federation, like 191 national societies, have decided that actually it's time for us not only to have a youth commission, which is represented by its chair in the governing board and composed of young people under the age of 30, but also that we have a youth commission which is elected directly by its peers. So this year in 2019, in December, we will have historical first time ever election of young people to be members of the youth commission, and they will be elected by their peers, not as per the usual head of the delegation at the General Assembly. So I would leave it here, and then I'm happy to engage and continue exchanging ideas with the colleagues on the call. Thanks.
Okay, Marcel, thank you so much. Would you like to give some brief about the Compact for Young People in Humanitarian Action? How was the process? And
yeah, sure. Yes, we can hear you, and I can hear you. And sure, but maybe also with the UN major group being on the call, and with some of your longer term representatives back to the 2016, they would know the story better than me maybe, and the kind of would be more appropriate to share the process, how it went. I guess the culmination of this, what we call a historic platform, was in 2016 at the World Humanitarian Summit, when the compact was launched at a high-level event. And since then, many member organizations from various backgrounds, like United Nations agencies, Federation Red Cross Red Crescent, then the Norwegian Refugee Council, United Muslim Relief and Development, etc. And many other like youth-led organizations have also under the umbrella of the UN Major Group joined the compact. And for me, the compact is very much linked to the 5 corrections, which overall I usually say they are aiming to improve lives of children, adolescents, and young adults in their local communities. And I think that the most unique value add of this platform, given that there are so many agencies which care about well-being of children, adolescents, and young adults, is that the compact brings together people who are like-minded, institutions which are having similar mind and values when it comes to youth engagement. And I would say it's kind of like this amplifier of the voice when it comes to not only the needs but also the potential and the rights of young people. So I would leave it there, and I'm sure that many people on the call would know compact. And if there are any specific questions on the compact, yeah, I'm happy to take it on. And actually, we have also Sophia from the Norwegian Refugee Council, who has been a very active and leading member of the compact from the side of the Norwegian Refugee Council, and has been also spearheading one of the task forces linked to the corrections. So I believe she can also enrich the debate very much.
Okay, thank you very much. And would you like to share about your experiences so far about young people engagement at IFRC? How do you ensure that youth and including the informal settings to engage them in humanitarian community in the formal settings are not left behind so far? What can be done to bridge the existing gap between young people and the humanitarian community so far throughout the IFRC perspective?
Well, I guess that what can be said is the humanitarian landscape, and that's why also I guess the view on youth engagement and how can we benefit from engaging young people in the humanitarian sphere is evolving. And I can tell you that when it comes to the next period, or we have this election of the Youth Commission, which is bringing the voice of young people in national societies up to the global level, and they are influencing the decision making. I think that they're going to be developing their work plan from January next year for next 4 years. And from my perspective as a technical expert, but again, I'm not representing young people because I'm too old for that. I would see that what we as the Secretariat of the Federation, as a supporting management structure to the young leaders in this Youth Commission are going to be bringing to their attention is basically linkage between youth engagement and humanitarian action, not only as young people are the drivers, meaning leaders or volunteers or members of affected communities who benefit from the engagement with various agencies and also Red Cross Red Crescent in the various programs, but also as how do I put it, as in English they say this, the canary singing. So kind of, how do we say, the safeguarding elements and safeguarding entity and constituency when it comes to, for example, commitment of organizations and the community at large regarding the child protection, for example. Another area I feel that youth engagement is moving towards, where we have a chance as institutions to bank on the potential and intrinsic somehow way of seeing the world by young people, is the area of now I lost the word. It's basically area of basically keep making sure that we look at young people and youth engagement as one of the indicators which would tell us how healthy our organizations are.
Marcel, please unmute yourself.
Yeah, thanks. So the second kind of like, I would say that the next step in my kind of like, vision is the element of like banking on young people as the constituency and the engagement of them as a vehicle for indicating whether institutions that engage young people are healthy or not. And it would not necessarily only be, oh, do you as an agency have a youth policy? Oh, do you have a youth engagement strategy? But, for example, it would be something about, if you look at the composition of these or that organizations' decision-making bodies, and we look at the filter of three, right? Age, gender, and disability. Do we have some indication or data that would tell us that this or that agency, me or you, are kind of like a healthy organization or not? And yes, somebody is noting that we have the youth engagement strategy, and it's part of the institutional pillars that basically inform how we do youth engagement, regardless of basically who is coming as a person, because we know that youth commission chairs, secretary generals of the federation, presidents, governing boards, they change, but institutionally there is the youth engagement policy, there is the youth engagement strategy, and constitutionally we have the guarantee for the youth commission as a constitutional body. So institutionally, to get rid of these, it's rather difficult, one can say. And if that should be the case, then really the majority of the membership has to agree with that, to remove basically these safeguards in regards to meaningful youth engagement within the federation and also the national societies.
Okay, thank you very much. So,
sure.
Do you have any idea what are the challenges that youth is facing in the process of joining your file works or joining your meeting processes, policy processes?
Well, I guess that what we are struggling with is, and maybe that's like the challenge that we are trying to address in the recent years, and hopefully with also given the outer context of other organizations, we will be able to make some significant progress, is, and I don't like the word mainstreaming, but currently the youth engagement sits with the thematic files and portfolio, which is very much kind of like non-developmental. So for your
We don't hear your voice.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Marcel.
Yeah.
I couldn't hear anything. I think you muted yourself, Marcel.
No, it was a technical problem. It was for everyone. So I'm gonna mute everyone again. So Marcel, you might continue talking.
So I shall start now. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yes, you can start.
Yeah. So what I was trying to explain as the challenge is that for young people's engagement at the global level, maybe also at the national level, is if you want to engage in processes which are influencing the way how the organizations are run. Currently, we are very much sitting with policy strategy knowledge kind of like team, which is not the same team as the team which is running programs and operations. And I think that sometimes that can be the challenge that we might have worked on the ownership among people who are doing the organizational development, people who are like in the leadership, but then to really work with leaders of the programmatic and service areas, it's a different story. So I think that in practical terms, what I would want to see more naturally happening, and I'm not saying it's not, but more naturally and more meaningful, impactful way is that, for example, with the upcoming UN Summit on climate crisis or climate change, that the Federation is bringing, let's say, a couple of young people who are championing this area of work in their countries, and that they're bringing them towards the UN Summit and give them the space to influence the global agenda too. But this is just kind of when it comes to engagement in these high-level processes, but I still feel that we have to be very, vocal about applauding young people for basically the actions that they take in really changing lives and saving lives and changing minds in their communities. So basically, this type of policy work, if you will, must never be disconnected from what is happening and what people do in their communities. For me, honestly, if you are a representative of young people at a global level, but are lacking in experience at the branch when it comes to really, one can say, getting hands dirty with the real humanitarian aid, you are missing out, and it's really, for me, an issue, because I would not consider you or myself as a true representative of people and the humanitarian action that is taking place. And I think that's also the challenge for young people to somehow, balance those two aspects. Hello?
Okay, Marcel.
Okay. Right.
Would you like to anything else about your perspectives at IFRC, your experiences?
I think I spoke a lot, so thank you very much for again the opportunity. Okay. But I really look forward to listening to others. Speech, exactly. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. We will continue to discuss on, especially in the part of Compact for Young People in Humanitarian Action with you. Mm-hmm. But I should keep talking with the NRC representative, Sophia, if she is here. Is she here right now?
I'm here. How is my audio? Can you hear me?
It's perfect. Thank
Great.
You. Okay. Sophia Kuziaki.
That's it. Great.
Okay, thank you. Is being with us for the. As I mentioned before, she is representing Norwegian Refugee Council, and she is a global youth specialist at NRC. She will share the experiences of NRC and their perspective knowledge on the issue that we are talking about today. We will be listening to her. Would you like to keep going?
Yes, super.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe just to mention, for anyone who doesn't know, the Norwegian Refugee Council is a humanitarian organization, and we work in about 31 different countries. We've got one quite exciting kind of extra bit about us, which is an arm called NORCAP, which is basically around 1,000 experts from all over the world, and they stand ready to kind of deploy at 72 hours notice to support the UN and local authorities in humanitarian crises. So they're kind of like a very quick acting arm. But for NRC, in terms of youth, our youth work sits at the moment within our education department. So my work, even though it says Global Youth Specialist, I work in the education section specifically. And we basically support, really a range of formal and non-formal youth education programs. And we try our best to think about, young people are always telling us there needs to be a link between education, between training, between social engagement and employment. So we really try to focus on how do we help young people in our context to become really active and engaged members of their community, but also to give them choice so that they can, choose if they want to transition back into education pathway, or maybe, a work and a job are more important to them. But really important for us is the social, emotional, and personal development of young people in any of the programs that we work in. I think I just wanted to say that up front, just in case there's anyone who doesn't know about us in particular. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all today. It was really such an honor to be invited to talk. So I hope we can answer all of your questions, but always open if I forget anything or if you have more questions. But I think one thing we really as NRC want to share is that we want to always keep championing a very positive youth development approach that we see young people as a really positive asset. Who, if only we gave a lot of the young people that we work with a chance, they could be the ones being the change instead of us, the ones, coming with all the answers and giving them the way forward. They can make those choices together with us. A rationale I think that we always want to push is how can we as a team, all of us together, make sure that we work with the most marginalized youth? So think about inclusion, think about expanding opportunities so that we can engage the most marginalized youth that we work with to really lead to some sort of shift, that we think about engaging youth at all levels. How you all have such a power in being able to bring your voice and your opinions to really great big forums with people who will listen. So how do we make sure that we connect to each other so that we can help the voices and the opinions of the young people we work with channel up to you so that you have that, those stories and those voices to share in the different opportunities that you have. Arina, do you want me to keep going on some of the questions that you had posed to NRC?
Yes, that will be great.
Okay. I think, a question that was asked was, how do we reach young people in crisis situations? We really try to remember and never forget that the young people's needs in humanitarian crises really comes down to lost family and friend networks, loss of all the education opportunities that they had or perhaps never had, all the responsibilities that they have to take on, whether it be about family or work or so all of these things, all of these needs, we need to remember how to design our programs and inform our programs so that we can shape us to kind of stay as youthful as the youth we are trying to serve in a way. So that's why I mentioned the 3 pathways a bit earlier. We try not to say there's only one route for a young person. We try to say, okay, there's education pathways, social engagement pathways, and employment pathways. And we try to make sure that young people have an opportunity to actually choose which way they want to go and make sure that we are able to respond based on their needs. We find that young people respond to us, especially during needs assessments. They often tell us, you ask us all sorts, you keep coming and asking us questions, but then nothing happens. So you ask our opinions, but we don't see programming for us. We don't see opportunities for us. They also are always the first to remind us that you humanitarian actors, you kind of always miss us out. We're an overlooked population during first phases of response. I think the positive that we see sometimes is that we're trying to respond more and update them more. So if we go in for a needs assessment and have a talk to young people, we try to go back and let them update them on what our findings were, what the commitments were made after these needs assessments. Or if we do a program evaluation by some big external evaluator, we make sure that we go back to the young people themselves and say, okay, this is what the findings are telling us. How are we going to make our program respond better to the needs that you're telling us that you have? It seems very simple, but it's something we've really struggled with over the years. And the Compact for Young People in Humanitarian Action is kind of the reason why we joined. We want to get better. And like Marcel was saying, the things that UNICEF does and commits to other partners that are part of the Compact, we feel like we're learning from you all and trying to get better as we go. So we strive to be more inclusive and ensure that we are responding to what young people are saying and communicating back and forth. And I think the tools that the Compact is giving us is helping us to get better at that. I think the guidelines for working with young people in humanitarian action are going to be a really great tool for us to get better. They try to give really clear guidance and examples of how we can engage young people more throughout the whole humanitarian program cycle. So from that planning phase to the design, to the assessment of, or rather the implementation of, and then the assessment of, how can we work with young people and plan it so that we do it? And I've seen through even though the guidelines are draft right now, we've seen country officers in NRC responding. They're sending us, draft work plans where they very clearly state out, okay, throughout the year, here are our touch points with our young people that we speak to. And this is how we're going to involve them, and here are the commitments that we make. So we're seeing some good move forward, but I think we have a long way to go. And I think being part of discussions like this with you all, and maybe a lot more, I hope in the future, we can improve on all the commitments that we've made and learn from you all during that. Another question that you were wondering was, how are we engaging young people as service providers? And how are we engaging other stakeholders to work with young people in humanitarian settings? And I think, again, we're getting better. We are not the best. We are trying our utmost and open to lots of suggestions and discussions. But we're trying to look a lot more at working with ministries of youth in different countries that we work with, and not just ministries of education. We're also really trying to connect and get our country officers to think more about what youth-led organizations exist in the countries that you work in. Whether that be a group like Youth Without Borders, for example, we have a partnership in Jordan right now. It's kind of a back-to-back capacity building. So we learn from Youth Without Borders, they learn with us, and we kind of accompany each other while delivering youth activities across Jordan, especially in the host community areas. I think that is the most I can say about that. I mean, one of the things to mention is that we're trying our best to have discussions where possible about influencing policy. And that might be certain donor policies where we're finding that for education specifically, the cutoff for giving funds for youth education or for education in general often ends at 18. So together with you and with other youth-led organizations and with partners on the ground, we really want to see how we can lobby together as a team to come up with the key messages and also keep pushing for how we can ensure that education is available for those above 18 years as well. And then finally, a question you asked was, how do we bridge the gap between young people and the humanitarian community? I think the biggest message that NRC can bring to this discussion is how do we give, and you say this all the time, so how do we give young people a seat at the table? But how do we give different young people a seat at the table? So different levels of whether it be programming and decision making. So in Zaatari, for example, in Jordan as well, we have participation of youth volunteers in a camp level youth task force. And that's really a good example of local participation in coordination mechanisms. And I think we need more showing of examples where we can find these opportunities for participation at local level, so that we, in a way, make sure that youth participation is not limited to high-level participation at really big events. So we're hoping that we can work closer together with MGCY colleagues and other partners to see how we can get a little bit better at this. That's it from me. Open to any questions if anything wasn't clear or if I can provide any more information, but I'd also love to hear anyone's thoughts.
Thank you so much, dear Sophia, for sharing your experiences and your feelings, thoughts about youth engagement in global and national levels. Actually, I have a point on the Compact for Young People in Humanitarian Action, because one of the most important aims of this webinar to make the participants understand better the process of the Compact for Young People in Humanitarian Action. So I want to ask you how did the process begin from the perspective of your international organizations? How did the idea of the Compact for Young People come to the table in Humanitarian Summit in Istanbul? So I am wondering your ideas, and I am expecting you to explain the process a bit more for our participants. Marcel, would you like to start?
Yeah, thanks, Arva. I'm just wondering, because I mean, I love history, and history is important for planning the future. So I guess that I would need to understand a little bit more the rationale for this question, because as I said, it was in 2016, and there was a journey towards the preparation for the World Humanitarian Summit. And I guess that the main reason why this type of work around the compact and galvanizing and attracting organization that work in youth engagement happened was that everybody did their best, everybody did great work, but there was another place where all of the expertise and greatness on youth engagement would somehow be meeting, and that's why the growth and learning from each other was also limited. So I would just kind of leave it up to here, and then with your clarification on what is the rationale behind exploring the journey that led to the 2016. I guess that would be from my side currently the most I would say reasonable input.
Okay, Sophia, would you like to share anything on the issue?
I think, I mean, Marcel did a great job there. I think the only thing I can add is that the world kind of came together to streamline a set of categories where we think we really are, for lack of a better word, failing, but I could say want to be more successful on. So, for example, if you think about the different task forces that we have on the compact, one is called data, right? Understanding and getting everyone on the same page about something very simple, like what are the age brackets we're all talking about when we talk about youth? That is really difficult in our context. And it means that if you're not acknowledged, you're not counted. And it means if we're not reporting all the same, we're not able to really improve our programs, our response. It means that we're not able to lobby and show that a certain age group is maybe being left out of education provision. These things seem small, but they're actually quite huge. And I think the compact in its 5 different themes is really responding to some of the major gaps that we have when it comes to youth programming in our contexts. I hugely welcome it. It's the only forum like this. It's such an open space where you can talk about these issues across our organizations. And I feel like we're all very like-minded. We are all struggling with the same things. We all want to get better. We want to open up the space to hear from young people themselves, which I think is quite unique. So I don't think I'm adding much there, more my personal reflection from NRC side, but it is definitely responding to some major gaps that have been identified across the humanitarian landscape for young people.
Okay, thank you so much for your meaningful speech.
Thank you very much, Eva.
Okay, thank you. Bubakar,
Hi, can you hear me?
With your speech? Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, good. So maybe
would you like
just
to start?
Yeah. I just wanted to share a little bit about the question that you've asked Marcel, maybe for him to understand better the rationale behind the question. Basically, we know that IFRC and UNFPA are the co-secretariats for the Compact for Young People in Humanitarian Action. So we just wanted to understand what is IFRC's stand behind the compact, and then as well how do we ensure the different works of the compact and the different task force within the compact are, actually functioning as expected towards the expectation of young people as stated in the compact for young people in humanitarian action. I mean, how do we kind of achieve this global vision of the compact for young people in humanitarian action?
Right, thanks, Babukar, for the clarification. So it's okay. Now I understand it's not necessarily really about pathway toward 2016, but actually how are we moving ahead, and I guess staying true to the vision that was somehow guiding the development of the compact as a document and its core actions, and that at that time in 2016 attracted a significant number of very diversified we can call it membership. So in that regard, yes, I guess that the compact, I think it's like additional somehow layer of accountability, because the members of compact actually, it's a compact which means that we are holding each other as professional organizations and also individuals working and representing for various members of the compact, that we hold each other accountable, and that we deliver and make strides in these 5 core actions, or core commitments. And I guess that this is kind of like a sandwich, I would say, attitude or approach towards the existing work that is taking place and has been taking place, with some marvelous achievement, with some areas where we are really, really concerned, with some areas where we are extremely concerned, and they don't necessarily link to, one can say, dryness of the wording in the compact, like data or participation, but it's really about the actual life of individuals who basically one can say either benefit or really suffer from the flaws of the humanitarian system, in which we know that many children and young adults are caught in the midst of the humanitarian crisis, and it's not their fault. So for me, banking on the existing work of the members of the compact, we are expecting and holding each other accountable to improve our systems, institutional procedures, and cultures to be more aligned to the core commitments, and that's basically building on the existing work. And then on the top of that, we have the task force, 5 task force, which on the global level are trying to bank on the competency and experience within the member organizations and combine it in a synergy. So, for example, we have the task force one led by Norwegian Refugee Council and UNICEF, and they have spearheaded the development of the guidelines for engagement of young people, children, and adolescents in the humanitarian landscape, and these will be benefiting basically much beyond Norwegian Refugee Council or UNICEF or the other members of the task force, because, for example, we, using the convening power, for example, of the Norwegian Refugee Council, of the UNICEF, of the IFRC, of the UNFP, so big players in that sense, we are using the convening power to somehow, institutionalize the outputs of our work, and not only documents, but also the approaches how to do business when it comes to engagement of young people to wider network, wider audience. So, for example, now with the guidelines, we are aiming for the Interagency Standing Committee to, basically put the stamp on the guidelines in regards to acknowledging that this is a document which outlines approaches and principles that have to be seen across all of the, humanitarian program, be it led or financed by whomever. So I think that's the kind of additional layer of push which can be made because of the convening power of this collective, the members of the compact. I don't know if I answered your question, but let me check with you before I continue in my further kind of maybe elaborations on the topic.
Yeah, sure.
Thank
you are
you.
in line.
From my side, it was great. Thank you.
Oh, sure. Perfect. Thanks.
So thank you. Okay, we thank you to your for your speech. Boubacar, would you like to start your talking about UNMGCY's engagement, and then we can start gathering the questions from our participants?
Sure, Eva. Thank you very much, Eva. And then because we're running against time, so I'm really gonna keep it brief. Basically, UNMGCY, it's UN officially mandated space for young people to engage in various intergovernmental policy processes, and then as well within the review and implementation, the review processes of the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. Yeah. So UNMGCY basically has different working groups, in which the Humanitarian Affairs Working Group, of course, falls on the Humanitarian Affairs Working Group was formerly known as the WHS Working Group, that is the World Humanitarian Summit Working Group. That was before the World Humanitarian Summit, and during the World Humanitarian Summit that was held in Istanbul, where the compact got its back. So from there, right, it was changed to the Humanitarian Affairs Working Group, and then UNMGCY basically works around different thematic areas. We work around capacity, we work around knowledge sharing, advocacy, and then most of our works are basically online, and then if we are able to meet various conferences or forums, then we're able to, do some face-to-face discussions as to how do we move forward as a constituency or as a major group. Yeah. So the Humanitarian Affairs Working Group is basically coordinating the engagement aspect of UNMGCY within the global humanitarian space, to ensure that the young people have the space to meaningfully engage within various discussions at the United Nations level. Notwithstanding, we as UNMGCY as well relies on the great expertise of individuals from organizations like myself. I am with the Gambia Red Cross, of course, under the IFRC. But of course, you have different young people that have been engaged in UNMGCY, bringing different expertise and experiences into the work of MGCY. So basically, that is UNMGCY. We have different working groups, the Humanitarian Affairs, the DRR working group, Migration working group, you name them. So how do we engage young people as UNMGCY? More specifically as Humanitarian Affairs Working Group. Here, like I said, initially we do more of online engagements where we do virtual discussions as to how do we want to move forward, and then sometimes we do some local activities in consultation or in partnership with organizations that are found within some of those countries where we want to do our engagements. And then as well, in terms of challenges, we all know young people have different needs within humanitarian contexts. So this is why, in fact, within the compact for young people in humanitarian action, young people were able to, at the World Humanitarian Summit, we were able to, come up with 5 key action areas, looking at the issue of participation, looking at the issue of resource allocation for young youth-led initiatives, the provision of data, disaggregated data for young people, and then, you name them. So MGCY basically focuses on these areas as Humanitarian Affairs Working Group. Our 2 core focus areas, it's within the Compact for Young People in Humanitarian Action and within the ECOSOC has, that is the ECOSOC Humanitarian Affairs segment, as well the Agenda for Humanity. So basically that is it about, in brief, about UNMGCY Humanitarian Affairs Working Group. So we know, of course, as we engage young people, there are a series of challenges that young people face, and then these are actually or often, because of widening of gaps between young people and the humanitarian communities. So one, in terms of participation, young people are not given the rightful place to sit in decision tables to discuss issues affecting them, and then usually when there are wars, conflicts, or disasters, it is young people who are basically in the forefront to give humanitarian assistance. And then respond to the humanitarian crisis, right? So young people have the innovation, they have the expertise, the skills, and the knowledge to be able to, change the entire humanitarian landscape of the world if given the opportunity. So just to keep it short, Eva, I think I'm gonna draw my points here, and then we'll just open up the floor for questions in case the audience or participants have something to share. Then we can quickly respond to their questions. Thank you.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
before I conclude, I'll as well want to take this opportunity to wish all young people, specifically the entire humanitarian world humanitarian day, which is of course one of the main purpose why we organize this webinar. So World Humanitarian Day to all of you, and then as well we celebrate you ever together with other young women within the humanitarian communities. You are doing great to ensure that you protect and promote the dignity of human beings. So happy World Humanitarian Day to all of you.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. Thank you so much for all those. Thank you so much to all the speakers for your very remarkable points that you mentioned during your speeches. I don't want to keep long this part, and I want to keep taking the questions from the audience. Would you like to share your questions, dear participants, by opening your microphone, by talking, or by writing in the chat box? Do you have any question to our speakers?
So I think there are some couple of questions in the chat. So we'll try to answer as much as we could. If we're unable to answer to your question now, we'll of course respond to you via email. So meanwhile, we'll be sending a post-webinar evaluation questionnaire. You can fill them in with the details that are required so that we're able to meet your needs or expectations. Right? Thank you. So there is one question here from Ali. This thematic is very interesting.
I couldn't.
Yeah, it's here in the chat. This thematic is very interesting and useful. Sorry, a lot of chats popping up. Unfortunately, I think Africa French countries are not involved. I'm talking about the Central Africa region, Cameroon, Chad, and Gabon, DRC. Please, what can you do, Sophia, Marcel, Boubacar, Eva? Say to this. So,
are you mentioning to talk French in the webinar?
So I think, Eva, what Amy is trying to put across here is in terms of the participation of French-speaking countries from the West and Central Africa level, let's say French-speaking countries in general. What we're doing at UNMGCY is to give the space to every young person, regardless of your background, your country, so long you have the interest and are willing to partake in the work of MGCY, we are absolutely open to welcome you. And then I'll drop my email, I'll drop our email so you can chat us from there, and then we'll take this forward. But just to let you know that we have different focal points, regional focal points. On West and Central Africa level, we have a focal point that is overseeing that region. So it's very good that you're bringing this up, and then we'll try to see how best we reinforce our engagements with some of these French-speaking countries within that part of the region. Thank you. Marcel and Sophia, maybe you have one or two things to respond to that.
Yeah, Sophia here. I think just to share, it's at a programmatic level, we're always talking about with the NRC in Central African Republic, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, Cameroon, quite a few countries. We do have youth education programs, and our teams are working quite well now, thanks to the compact, thanks to the guidelines, having a bit more, practical tools. How do we engage young people in our programs? We've got lots of examples to share you on how we are starting to improve. So if you're interested, absolutely, I'll put my email down and we can share more. But it's very at a programmatic level. How do we include young people to improve our program response to them?
From my side, I can share that, yeah, of course, the language is one of the, let's call it, very helpful ways how you can communicate, but also oftentimes it's very seen, especially in the international context, as a barrier. So in the Federation, we have basically 5 official languages in which all of the official documents have to be, available even on our website. But when it comes to the operational level, we rely on the national societies who are the network members, and they would be the ones to make sure that that the voice of, let's say, people from their country, young people from their country, from their society is also echoed at the global level. And I understand the concern of being left out, or because of there is no consideration for the language. But I think that it's really about, for me at least, on both sides, we have to know that, okay, this and this region, or this and this group and constituents, because it goes beyond language. And I would want us to really talk beyond language. Let's talk about intersectionality, because it's really about the access. So if you're a French speaker, with hearing impaired and all of that, it's really kind of making your life extremely difficult and challenging, especially because of the majority doesn't give considerations to these limitations that basically, you have to overcome. So that's why you have to be so resourceful to make it possible for you to engage. And I really want to hold directly with young people. I usually say this, even though I'm oftentimes not very well received, that if we as young people start seeing language as a barrier, we have a problem. We are, I believe, not the ones who are supposed to be just pointing out, oh, we don't have this document in French. Oh, we don't have this webinar in French. I really believe in the self-organization, the power of youth activism. And I really want to kind of at least, see the kind of way of thinking that is coming from young people, not the same necessary way as from the adults, who would be kind of oh, we want money for translation, as opposed to kind of oh, let's organize this. Again, it was very good webinar, but Marcel didn't speak French, so let's make it happen. Let's find the French speakers and let's organize it for the constituency of the UN major group memberships that is preferring French as a language. So again, I really believe that when people, young people especially, start seeing language as a barrier, we have a big problem.
Thank you very much, Marcel. Thank you for that. I think it's pretty important, as you've stated, that we're able to take our own initiatives as young people to be able to overcome some of these barriers. Of course, notwithstanding, we would still require the support from every angle to be able to take this forward. And then with that suggestion, I believe the team is listening, and then we'll be very keen to hold similar webinar in different language to be able to cater for the needs of other young people from other parts of the world. So there is a question from Regine. Regine, I think from the ASEAN Youth, they've actually signed the compact, but I think since then they're simply receiving the information about the compact. So he's still wondering if their email, they're part of the mailing list of signatories. Maybe Marcel?
Sorry, I totally missed the question because there was a breaking on your side. So we have a member who signed the compact from Asia, and the question is.
The question is, I think she is asking, she is wondering that if there is any mailing list or communication channel for the international organization who signed the compact.
Yes, so there is, of course, email list, which we are with the UNFPA maintaining manually, believe you or not, and we are trying to, like, reach out. And to have the reach also conflicts through our web page that was set up just recently. So if you want to be receiving the emails that are sent to the membership of the compact, including the UN major group, yes, I guess like the smartest would be consult with Mridul, because we can go different ways. We can go either that Mridul will, like, put a special attention to your organization to be, like, distributing the, or like making sure that the information is reaching you, or after consulting with Mridul, we can add you, if you have signed on the CEO level the compact, we can add you, of course, to the mailing list, which like normally you would already have been there. So I guess like I would propose to consult with Mridul, and then after the consultation, Mridul kindly reaching out to me with a proposed solution, if that is agreeable.
Thank you. I think there is another question from Corey. The question is, how do you focus on creating awareness on youth? She's asking especially for the African countries. I think she's mentioning they don't have unlimited internet access in their country, so she is asking how do you reach these people living in African countries without internet connection? Marcel.
Well, yeah, from my side, it's like, I guess not the only concern of humanitarian agencies, but also of, other players, other, like, I guess, corporate sector or government. So I kind of like sometimes imagine this type of situations that, in these remote areas which are disconnected from internet or like not really well connected to the internet, I'm sure that Coca-Cola has managed to get their products over there. So how did they do it? And I would somehow like, try to bank on their business practice. And at the same time, I feel that, looking at the world that we live, I sincerely believe that the human kind of like, interaction and human relationships are really crucial, and they can and should be very complementary to the modern technology use and all of that. And let me just kind of like also share a personal remark as a white male from Europe. Oftentimes when we get these questions of, oh, in Africa, we don't have, like the unlimited access to internet and all of that. Believe you me, we have this like, issue with reaching the last mile, right? And I don't think that, it can be just done by improving internet connections. And oftentimes in this type of like, questions, I feel that we are already, basically biased, because the question is framed as it comes like coming from a place where, oh, poor, like, like people in Africa. Whereas I see so many things, for example, on the World Economic Forum website, projects about like, how the African people's ingenuity is really transforming the lives, not only for Africans, but, like others are learning from it. So I guess that I would want us to, like sit together, because I don't live in Africa. I have no clue. So like to ask me those type of questions, I can be only helpful to basically challenge a stereotypical way of thinking that is arising in people's mind, because, that's how we are all somehow, framed and shaped. But I guess, imagine Coca-Cola or Danone, have they managed to kind of like, get their products there? And if yes, there must be a way. So how do we somehow, make sure that they start sharing their business practice for the benefit of wider community, not only for their business and profit?
Thank you, Marcel. Sophia, would you like to add anything on that question?
I think I see the question in two strands. One is how do we have the communities we're talking about with NRC programs, can be talking about very, very remote communities. So one is how do we create awareness around the positiveness of young people? Young people are so often stereotyped in the communities that they live in. So how are we in our programs able to ensure that they can engage with the community so that the community also opens up and sees how well they're doing, how much energy they have, the creative ideas they have, see them in a positive light. So we're not perfect at this, but we really try to ensure that the skills that are learned in our education program are also used for social good. So is that volunteering within the community? Does that mean opening up the youth education center for the community to come in? Let's say, for example, a fridge breaks or a dress is ripped. Can our young people help them to repair these things? Kind of an open free day, just so that the community is more engaged to see young people in a very positive light, instead of seeing maybe what they're used to, a lot of young people sitting around doing nothing every day. And unfortunately, lots of stereotypes can develop from that. And then I think the second thing is really about creating awareness so that youth know that these opportunities exist for them. And that's super difficult, right? In South Sudan, we have a great Facebook page where it seems like quite a lot of youth are connecting and able to see that there's a program, that it's time for enrollment now. We can post pictures and get some excitement about the program up. But it also has to be very much at grassroots level. The networks that young people have, where are young people? Let's go find them. Let's make them aware in much more kind of more basic ways, like information sheets in the right language, in the right tone. Also make sure that our staff are young and youth-friendly. So if we have someone who's not so youth-friendly going in and talking about the cool youth program that's about to start, maybe that's not so going to generate enough awareness for young people that there's an opportunity for them. So there's lots of tips and tricks, but yes, we're very open to hearing more ideas so that we can improve always.
Thank you so much. Would you like to anything, Marcel? I heard your voice. Okay. Gabriel is asking another questions. I think he wants to know if there is any collaboration with IFRC and between the IFRC and UNMGCY at global and regional level. Marcel, I think this question is to you.
Yeah, thanks. So for Gabriel, I think that I would respond and then I would leave the floor to Mridul and Babukar. We are working with the UN Major Group through the compact, like in the sense that I guess that's why also the invitation to join this webinar has reached me. And in the past, with the previous leaders like Moa, we have also been working together on opportunities like the Sendai conference on DRR and other global fora like the WHS Youth Preparatory Summit in Doha. So there are opportunities on the global level where we consider collaboration, and but there is no formal we establish like TOR or memorandum of understanding between the organizations. I guess also because of the International Federation of College Crescent Societies, we are not a youth-led agency, and we really operate around intergenerational collaboration.
Bakar, would you like to add?
Yeah, Eva, so to Jibril, of course, at UNMGCY level, at some point, we might have one or two activities that we want to do at a particular country level or at a regional level. So might be poised to partner or collaborate with the Red Cross, Red Crescent offices that are actually found within some of these areas. So basically, that is as you yourself know, you're Red Cross volunteers. So for instance, one of the activities that we had in the Gambia, the UNMGCY had to, be hosted by the Gambia Red Cross at the national office when we are doing the consultation around the toolkit on the toolkit for working with for young people in humanitarian action sometime in 2017. So it's the same thing, and then I hope this answers your question as well.
Thank you, Bakar. I think Amy is asking another question again. I'm gonna read straightly to make the question a bit more clear. He is saying that many youth want to help in humanitarian contexts. A few months before, Cameroonian youth wanted to help people in Mozambique. After the cyclone, they collect many dresses and wanted to give their time, but this activity failed. How can Compact help to avoid this and get more volunteerism from youth everywhere? Marcel, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. So if I understand correctly, it's about you wonder what are the barriers in engagement when young people from one country want to help in a crisis like in Mozambique, and it's not happening, right? And for me, that if I get it right, that's for me a bit of a kind of like more complex issue, which links to the what one can call international volunteering. And I guess there, if I was asked as the head of agency and you would come to my office as an enthusiastic representative of young, capable, and skilled people who want to volunteer their, let's say, knowledge of nurses or IT specialists or water and sanitation experts, you would want to lend this expertise to to address the disaster and improve the lives of people in Mozambique. I would tell you, let's hold our horses before we kind of go over to these countries, like whatever disaster area. Let's make sure that they really need what we are offering, and that we somehow are having a consulted way of engagement that will not cause even more disruption in what the nation is trying to basically handle and address. So I would somehow, always as a CEO of an agency based in your country, before promising you any type of engagement, want to consult and understand what other countries need. So sometimes I also by this saying, sometimes that things do not happen is not a bad thing, because ideally there is a reason for them not happening. But I know that other example is, when just kind of there is so much potential and talent in young people that is somehow just not banked on, or it's just disregarded. That's another story which I believe would not happen in the case that I would be heading a NGO.
Thank you, Sophia.
Yeah, I really agree with Marcel. It's such a difficult and important question. I think I agree in the, my background has been working in South Africa. I'm South African. So I'm used to more of a developmental organization background. Coming into the humanitarian field in the last 6 years has taught me a lot about how organized things has to be, otherwise it becomes so disorganized. So if you think about Greece, the crisis that happened in Greece in 2015, so many people were arriving in Greece willing to support, but it created a lot of different processes and parallel support systems, which can actually complicate the situation, right? So I think it's a very good thing if we hear more people having these kinds of examples or this kind of want to support. We need to almost map out what are the organized routes for worldwide volunteering, like Marcel said, and then trying to channel our efforts through those already. And if they don't exist, let's talk about that and think about that. But again, if we don't know that there's people out there wanting to support, then we can't do anything. And if we don't know what the formal processes are to kind of link into those and strengthen them and support, then we're going to have moments where we, you know, feel like we're failing because we want to give so much, but we don't know where to go with it. And I kind of see MGCY as that forum where we can hear about the things that young people are wanting to do and the unfortunate failures and also the successes. And try to come up, if this is something that is really important to everyone, we can maybe kind of try to come up with some practical, quite quick action plans to see if we can support people. Particularly mapping out or making everyone aware of what are the formal channels. And if they don't exist, how could we maybe think about partnerships, for example? I'm really not sure if that answered the question at all. It's such a big question. Yeah.
But building on Sophia, she brought up a memory of my friend, if I may, to add. So my friend from German Red Cross, she was a young person, lady, and she was really frustrated with the way how the things were happening, for example, specifically in Greece. So basically, she decided to self-organize. She did a collection of money. She found similar-minded people, and then without the Red Cross, right? I mean, she went with little car they bought, and basically they were cooking one hot soup to every migrating person who was passing by, and also giving them some other minor support. But mainly their focus was on the soup provision. But I mean, I think that's great, because we have to have, let's call it less institutionalized ways of how people can help. So it's not necessarily, oh, for me, this and this organization is too bureaucratic and they are following procedures and people are dying in the meantime. Yes, that's one way, but I believe there are different ways of, this self-organizing pathway is great. But there is only concern that I have with that, which is that as an institution, when you come to Red Cross Red Crescent and you ask me about engagement in this and this crisis, I will not only make sure that there is a proper accompaniment before, during, and after, right, your engagement. So, so that kind of we somehow address and minimize issues like my friend who has been there, make personal sacrifice financially. She really believed in it, and all of the values were there. She mobilized money. She went back to Germany and then again, but then she burned out, and there was nobody who would look after her because there was no institution basically which would take the responsibility. And I think it's really important, especially for young people, because at the end of the day, you oftentimes with your enthusiasm might threaten also your studies, and etc., etc. So I would say that really I appreciate self-organization. That's how I started. I started as a local branch volunteer with the Red Cross in Slovakia in a small town, and that's what kind of I didn't save lives in a disaster, but I worked with marginalized communities, with kids in the kindergarten, etc. So that's what I mean, getting hands dirty. But at the same time, I know myself that it's very easy to just forget yourself because you're so passionate about the cause. And I believe that in 2019 we are at a point where institutions are having some safeguarding mechanisms, which somehow, are making the institution think a little bit about, the engagement of people which they deploy to, for example, humanitarian crises. So if you self-organize, I think it's the way to go, because sometimes it's really more effective or practical and suits you more than to just work and change the institutional ways of doing things. But then I would advise, remember always remember yourself, and that basically you have to look after yourself despite the good cause and any motivation that you have.
Thank you so much for your responses to our participants, but we are a bit out of the time so far. Thank you so much, dear participants, for your attendance. But we have to close the webinar right now. The questions that we can't respond so far, we are gonna respond them from the email. Just follow your emails after the webinar. We are gonna respond them. And just a quick reminder for the feedback form, don't forget to fill out the form after the webinar. We are gonna send them also via email. Thank you so much for your very important points, for your very inspiring talking so far, dear Marcel and Sophia. It was a big pleasure to meet you and to host you in this webinar. I hope you enjoyed it. Do you have any last word to the participants as a whole message?
Just a great appreciation, and please seek advice from the seniors in your communities. And by seeking advice, you're also going to hold them accountable and build a relationship with them. And that's, I believe, the way how the journey can be a little bit easier for you. All the best, and thank you again for having me.
Thank you so much. Sophia?
I've just sent a little big thank you to you in the chat box, but I agree with Marcel. Thank you very much for the opportunity. And I think, reach out to your constituents in UNMGCY. And if you have questions that you feel, there were a lot of questions about how do we break into the humanitarian sector and get more involved. These are things we're willing to share our experiences with you. So I think keep the conversation going, and I hope for more of these webinars.
Yay!
So much.
Yay!
Take care, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Good luck, all.
Bye.
Good morning to everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You all humanitarian, to all of you. Bye-bye, and then do enjoy.
Thanks. Bye, all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Ibrahim. Sabiha, thank you. Thank you very much, Safia and Marcel. Hi, Alice. Thanks. Anytime. Hi, Tunde. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Kita dokter dia mau ningkatin nomor, dia mau stop lagi, we need to bukan nomor.